There we go.
Hey,
There we go. Good
yeah.
morning, Joseph. How you doing this morning?
Good morning. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I just told everybody my thoughts and prayers are out for the people in Florida because they're going to get hit with a hurricane that was maybe as bad as Katrina.
Yeah, it looks pretty ominous over there. And I used to live in Florida, and when Central Florida is talking about being concerned about a hurricane, it's a significant hurricane. But I really am concerned about the Tampa area and that whole side because usually hurricanes usually don't go up that side of Florida. You know, the West Bank is usually the East Bank. So,
Yeah.
and then people since night what they said 1921 they haven't seen anything
Yeah.
like that. So. Yeah, I'm hoping that people don't, a lot of people don't try to just ride it out. You know what I mean?
Well,
'Cause,
well, you know, you
that's
know, you know, some will, some will. Matter of fact, one forecaster said with winds over 200 miles an hour, it could go through there, and what's ever there could be left with a slab.
yeah, it's just prayers to people in Florida, that are looking at this hurricane because I'm looking at it now. This looks pretty rough, man.
And
So
the strange thing about it is it's gonna go across Central Florida back out to Atlantic Ocean. I mean, straight through. So they got places gonna get over 2 feet, not 2 inches, but 2 feet of rain.
yeah, I don't think people realize how big that is.
Yeah.
When you talk about the grand scheme of things, but Central Florida, that's usually a generally safe place. So for it to be that concerning says something about the size of that storm. So,
Yeah, that's so true.
all the CPS workers on the way down there, I've got a very close colleague up in Michigan that works at CPS and, always sending those guys out. So got to give a shout out to them. They're always
Yeah.
putting themselves in harm's way to keep power on for people.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. So, since we last talked, we did get a few questions in,
Outstanding. Let's get
and
to them.
this is a good one right here.
Okay.
Where is it? She wanted. This came from, believe it or not, Veronica, but not our Veronica,
Where's Veronica from? Can you tell?
New Mexico.
New Mexico. All right.
Yeah.
Well, for our listeners in New Mexico, welcome and thank you for tuning in.
She want to know: is depression or anxiety, is it permanent?
Hmm. Good question. Is anxiety or depression permanent? Depression can be a something that you deal with off and on. There's seasonal depression that comes every season. There's depression, major depression that's pretty serious. It's a serious clinical diagnosis. Um, but it doesn't have to be something that is permanent. The effects of it can be permanent. It can be treated. And that's one of the reasons why you go talk to a therapist, because sometimes it can be treated with cognitive behavioral techniques and change of perspective. And sometimes it can be changed with a combination of that and medication. So you may have some of the traits of depression, or you still may have some of the triggers that cause depression, but how you react to it can be all the difference, right? In terms of how you deal with it. And there can be a genetic component. Some people are more predisposed to depression, anxieties, because we're finding that there's a connection genetically. So you may be predisposed to it. So it's kind of a complicated question because it depends on what triggers you. It depends
Yeah.
on if there's a genetic component. It depends on how well you respond to cognitive behavior or medication. All of that. So and what's causing it? Like if you're in the situation that's causing depression and not changing it, then yeah, it can be permanent, right? I mean, if you're let's just say, for instance, your spouse is abusive, or you're not, responding to you, or family members or whatever not responding to you in a way that's healthy, then that causes your depression. Well, if you continue to deal with that person and they continue to treat you that way, then what do you think is going to happen? You're going to continue to be depressed, right?
Yeah.
So now, if it's a biological reason, like just say, some people suffer. I occasionally, when I was in Michigan, I used to suffer from seasonal depression. When fall or winter would come, every season, that would be my trigger. So it gets darker, you know what I mean? And it stays darker longer. So that will cause me to enter sometimes like the blues or a little bit of a depression, right?
Yeah.
So, that's seasonal. Um, so when you say permanent, is it like constant? No, if you're having constant depression all the time, then there's something going on that you need to alleviate, be it, in your personal life, your relationships, whatever, or even something genetic where you might need to have medication. So,
Well, you just mentioned relationships. That's a good point right there because um, why is it sometimes in relationships that person seems to be attracted to the same person that abused them before, and they say, "I don't want to go through that again," but yet they're attracted to the same one again, and that cycle is keep on repeating itself.
hmm well, that's a loaded question as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, I also want to say relationship and situational, right? Can be triggers for depression. And if you're in the situation or you're in a relationship, which is still somewhat situational, but I want to just signify those two things because that's what I see. Situations that cause people depression and also relationships that cause people depression. Then there's a genetic component sometimes that cause depression. So those three areas, if you don't change the situation, change the relationship, deal with the genetic component of it, then yeah, you can, have longer occurrences of depression. But in terms of relationships and getting into those relationships that cause depression or dealing with people that or continue to go back to people that, are causing you angst or anxiety or whatnot, there's a lot to that. Some people, have issues that go back to their relationship with their fathers, if it's females, and if they sometimes seek out relationships based on their relationship with their father. So if there's some ladies that need affirmation, from a male, and sometimes if that male does not respond or give them the attention that they want, and that's something they're familiar with from, say, a father or whatever, they may seek that type of relationship, which could then lead to, of course, depression, all kind of self-esteem issues, anxiety. It runs the gambit, right?
Yeah.
And this doesn't necessarily have to be just for traditional male-female relationships. That's any partner that's used to being, treated a certain way by their parent or people that care about them. And if that's what they're familiar with, that's what they may seek out, whether they know that consciously or subconsciously.
Yeah. Oh wow. This guy sent me a question from good old Tupelo, Mississippi.
Hey, that's where my dad's from, Tupelo.
Uh, he took one of those tests online, now a brain test,
Hmm.
uh, and he came in at a one. And I looked it up before I got on the air, and
Hmm.
I looked it up, and it's like a general sense. It's not really accurate. It tells you that you think well, your thought process is here, you're there, you got a healthy brain, you staying busy in life, and that according to what they said, keep on doing what you're doing and all that stuff. He want to know, should I trust those online tests?
Online tests are indicators, right?
Mm.
You can't compare an online test to a therapeutic evaluation, right? From a therapist, because we look at a lot of different things. I think they can sometimes be indicators that you may need to seek some additional help. They may give you a somewhat of a snapshot of a certain part of your life, but you can't go to um, you know, something that is only designed to test certain factors and look at certain things. And you need to look at something has to be able to look at your total situation. That's not just including what you tell them, but what a trained therapist is trained to look at and what you're not telling them. Looking at your body language, looking at your eye contact, looking at your posture, looking at the effect when you're saying some of these things. That's something that online you know pre checklist questionnaire is
Yeah.
not going to be able to detect. And there are certain questions that therapists we ask just to kind of see the effect so that we can go deeper in a particular subject to kind of find out if there's something else there, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're answering questions based on your perception. And if your perception is off, then how accurate is the outcome,
Exactly.
right? So I'm not saying that his perception is off or whatever the case may be. But what I'm saying is it could be, right? It's just like a sick person diagnosing themselves. How's that going to work out? You
Well,
know?
we got a lot of people out
So,
there that diagnose
but
themselves.
yeah, but it could give you an indication.
Yeah.
If you ask the right question, if you're in the right mindset, you could possibly get something that says, hey, I need to look into this a little further, or hey, maybe I'm on at least the right track, so
Yeah.
to speak.
Uh,
Yep.
a point you brought up a few weeks ago on how your brain is wired, because people's brains are wired different. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when how can I put? I wrote it down here. Let me see. How your brain is wired is based on life experience on how your brain is wired. But when does that wiring begins? The question I'm asking is when you are born through the developmental stage of life, when you're growing up, is it start to be wired right then and there? In other words, it's the input you get from all around you. Is that about accurate on how that happens, how your brain is wired?
Well, how the brain is wired is a combination of things. Number one, you've got your genetic makeup, and then you also have your environmental factors that have an effect on how you perceive life, how you interpret life. Like what I call it, your lens. What lens do you see your life through? So, my practice, we have this series, cognitive behavioral or psycho education series called the Urban Lens series, on how a lot of folks coming from depressed or deprived socioeconomic areas view life and how they perceive things, and to try to get folks to see through that lens and how they may be perceiving something very differently. So, what you experience has an effect. We know genetically now things are passed down, traumas are passed down, possibly genetically. So it all really comes down to what you're exposed to, what your perception is of the situation or the environment that you're in, or the triggers, and how you react to it and what the outcome has been based on how you respond to that. So it's a kind of a complicated question, but it's more factors in how your brain's wired. It's based on your experience, your environment, your genetic makeup, essentially.
Yeah. I have a question. I've been pondering over this. I'm going from the urban life on where you had to grow up fast and learn things in the street real fast to the
Mm-hmm.
life of things given to you.
Mm-hmm.
What I what I see in that, the ones that was brought up in the urban street area had to grow up fast. They're more to think fast on their feet. They're very resilient and solving things.
Mm-hmm.
Ones who have everything given to them, they're more or less like sit back, relax, analyze things, and then make a decision. My question of this is versus those two right there. I found out that people who was brought up in the streets in the urban area think faster and quicker, and they know what to do right away. And but compared to the ones who's given everything, their thought process is different. It's slower. I'm not saying that they're slow, but the thought process is slower on how they're gonna solve a problem when the one over there solves it just like that.
Mm-hmm.
So my what question I'm trying to get to, um, I guess it's not really a question; it's an opinion. So I just feel that there's no wrong answer to it. It like you said, demographics depends on where you're brought up at and how you're brought up. But when these two meet in college, because I did that when I went to school at Southwest Texas State. Um, there was one guy that came in, I can't remember his name. He just thought that he knew everything and all that stuff, and I would chop him down every time he say something, just to let him know this is how it really is out in the real world, in the real life.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we talk about your brain is wired, so I don't think his brain was wired too tight, to be honest with you, because he had this facade on how everybody was and how his life was and how it's going to be. But he had a hard reality check when he went to college.
So was he the one that came from the entitled area and you came from more of the street background or vice versa?
He came from an entitled area.
Okay, so I want to point out a couple of things because you brought up a loaded statement, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of psychological evidence uh, teachings on why that necessarily is, right? If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have the bottom of the hierarchy is where you're trying to survive, or you're trying to eat, find food. You don't have time necessarily to think of the higher level reasoning and thought processes and things like self-actualization. Those are things that are more toward the top. So for those of us that come from urban areas that are crime ridden, may have some serious challenges that you need to know how to respond to quickly, you learn how to think quickly because your literally your survival depends on that, right? You got to know what happens if a car starts pulling up kind of slow in tinted windows, you know, and you need to know what that means. You need to know if a situation suddenly changes. Like in Flint, Michigan, when I went to school there, when a fight broke out, everybody ran away from the fight. When I got to Grand Rapids, Michigan, when a fight broke out, everybody used to run towards the fight. Now, why is that? Right? Because in Flint, there may be a weapon involved. And what happens in those situations? Because to learn situations, when a fight breaks out, usually the people that get shot aren't even the people that had anything to do with the fight, right? It's or stab might not have anything to do with the fight, but they're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. So people would run away from the fight, at least to get to a safe distance to kind of see what was going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And vice versa. So when you're from different areas, it causes you to have different reactions and to view things differently. Now, both of those views are correct, right? In terms of your reaction. The result of people stopping and analyzing are people using those higher reasoning skills to try to evaluate a situation. There's some validity in that, but there's also a right time to do that and a wrong time to do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's time to run. If I hear a lot of loud cracks, I'm not going to sit there and go, logistically, I think that's coming from. No, I'm going to get down. I'm going to try wherever that sound's coming from. I'm going to try to get the opposite direction and put enough distance as fast as possible. Right.
Yeah.
That's what we've learned to survive. Right. So, it's when I was in the military, we had a little joke. We had a briefing one time, and I'll just be real brief. It kind of this will make the point. We had a briefing, and everybody we had these things in the military called all call, where everybody has to come and listen. And they were talking about safety measures and how to respond to if you see an IED. Well, they had to look in. They had to say that if you see a package that you don't really know what it is, don't get curious and go over and look at it. So all of a certain demographic of people looked at each other and said, well, we know who that's to, like it's not gonna be, that's something we would do. And then the other thing is, if you hear a loud noise, if you see people running, run. And we all kind of looked at each other. Those of us that they didn't have to say that to, they were like, well, we know who that briefing's for. It's not for us because, from every rank, from top down, knew that if something jumps off, and we need to run, that's not something you have to tell everybody. You know what I'm saying? We know to get to a position, to get behind something or whatever, because that's where we came from. There are some folks that from a different pigmentation that may be told that they have to run during the situation.
Yeah.
Right. And, so we knew, looking around the room, you could tell, and I'll just be honest, all the black folk, we knew, man, you wasting our time telling that, because if something happened right now, we're going to run out of here, because we just know, because of the environments we came in, what to do during certain situations. So, it just, it just depends on where you come from, what you're exposed to, how you respond to situations. But the reality is, we all can learn from each other, right? Yeah. Now, based on how I was trained in the military, if I have my family around, and there's something that happens and I have what I need to have on me, I may tell my family to get to a safe position and I may try to buy us more time or try to deal with the threat myself.
Yeah.
That's just because of what I have and what I know how to do. You know what I mean? But that took a lot of conditioning to do that. That's why in the military, there are people that have basic combat training and there are people that have basic military training. What I'm proposing a few shows ago is that we all have at least adults that have a CCW learn some basic combat type training, and in particular, some urban warfare training to deal with terrorists. Since that's what we seem to have, and partially what I was going to talk to you about today, a high rise in. I just read a disturbing article. I think it was, let me pull it up here. CBS News said millions of people say force is justified to restore Trump to the White House. That's like yesterday.
Man.
Millions. Now this is CBS News. Let's see if I can maybe pull it up on one of these screens so it's not just me saying it. Let me see if I can share my screen here. We're gonna do something we never did before. We're gonna test this out, Ron.
Well, I'm gonna have to.
Oh, you got to enable it.
Yeah, I got to enable it for you. Let me see
Yeah.
what I can do right here. No, that's me. I gotta shift it over to you.
All right. Maybe if I'm doing too much, let me know now. I can just give the article name.
I'm trying to see how I could do that.
And if not, it's no big deal because I can just give the name of the article, the date, and people can pull it up themselves.
Okay. Yeah, that's something, but we'll work on the next one. On the next
Okay, that's fine.
together.
So it was on CBS News. It's an article or a online segment by Jacob Rosen, Jacob Jacob Rosen Rosen, and it was released September 27th, 2022, which stated from the study by University of Chicago finds that millions of Americans believe force is justified to restore Trump to the White House. So after all this, January 6th, all this stuff that's going on with Mar-a-Lago, all the things that went on in the presidency, we still have millions of people that feel that force is justified to restore Trump to the White House. I mean, do we need to say anything more about mental illness?
No.
Do we need to talk about delusional thought processes at this point?
Nope. It's showing
I mean,
right there.
we have a perfect segment. I can't think, so here it is. And not just a couple million. Now I'm gonna read it as it's listed. More than 18 months after the rioting at the US Capitol by pro-Trump mob, an estimated 13 million US adults, or 5% of the adult population, agree that force would be justified to restore former President Trump to the White House. And an estimated 15 million Americans believe force would be justified to prevent Trump from being prosecuted. Should he be indicted for mishandling classified documents, according to a new study from the University of Chicago? Now, just let that sit for a second.
Man.
So when I read that yesterday, I thought about it. I said, okay, not only are we having a large segment of society completely delusional, but we are also, I would almost guarantee if we did a study on that, how armed are those folks?
Pretty well armed.
Okay. And then you have to look at the fact that it looks like there's going to be some indictments going. Even Trump's former attorney said that it looks pretty, there's a very strong chance Trump is going to be indicted because of the January 6th riots, much less what's going on with Mar-a-Lago, much less what's going on with Atlanta, Georgia. We are in a different situation right now, right? Yeah. And I was thinking about this and I said, who would be happy with us being this fragmented? A few names come to mind. Putin,
Yeah.
Kim Jong-il, and whoever, I can never think his name, the Chinese president, you know. So it's like we're being played right in front of us. And then here's the part that caught me. Do you know that they found passports for Trump and that goes in the same class? Look, we've been saying a long time ago that if he goes down, we think that Trump is going to try to jump ship and go over to Russia. Right now, I think his plans have been changed a little bit because Putin, I think, can't. I don't think he can be too hospitable right now. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So I think not only is Putin in a hard position right now, but I think Trump is too, because this isn't a rapid rats jumping off the ship situation, but it's a lot of big rats that they aren't jumped off the ship. They pretty much packed their bags. And I think what they're waiting for is that indictment to happen. And then you're going to watch and see how many people actually jump that ship. Mitch McConnell, he's going to be gone. He's going to be, I predict he's going to be one of the first ones to completely jump off that ship because he's been kind of waffling.
Yeah.
But when Trump gets indicted, I think that's what they're waiting on. They're going to jump ship. And I don't think it's going to be any riots, but I think there's going to be some people that internalize because of the narrative that's out there, that's been put out there by certain folks that there's going to be riots in the street. They're kind of putting that narrative out there.
Right.
Right. But the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of people armed, and there's a lot more people armed that aren't going to deal with no foolishness either. So we got 13. That's 5% of the adult population, and that's significant. That's significant. That's enough to cause problems, but it's not enough to get the means and the aims that I think that they're trying to get, right?
Yeah.
So, but I do think we need to talk about it. I do think we need to at least bring it up. Those are some numbers I think we need to see because out there, and University of Chicago, I think is pretty reputable college, and I think that was a pretty reputable study. So
And
it's there.
what you're saying that they're out there, I'm trying to figure out who are they going to fight. Only thing I can think of, the police, National Guard, the military. So we're not talking about a civil war. We're talking about them going against the establishment.
Not necessarily. It's partially, but not necessarily because they've also identified Democrats, people they would consider to be Democrats, right? So who would that be? Generally, people of color. A lot of women. Well, a lot of women are Republican and Democrat. But what does the stereotypical Democrat look like? So for those folks that are armed and maybe feel that justice would be justified to restore Trump to power, you can see these folks. I mean, because you know what happens if you attack police force or the FBI. We just had that happen.
Yeah.
How'd that work out for them?
Not good.
So most likely, if you're going to do something, you're going to probably pick soft targets, and that's why certain folks have been hardening themselves or should be hardening themselves so they don't be considered a soft target, right?
Yeah.
So that's my stance. I mean, just like Malcolm in the Middle up there would say, you need to defend yourself. That's why I have an AR recently purchased, but I was trained on an AR, and AR also means an automatic rifle, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm an Army veteran. I know I've been trained on the M16, and so I've got my arm to protect my family, myself. I'm be obvious. I'm not going hunting with it. I'm not. That's not why I bought my AR, right?
Yeah.
So I bought my AR to practice, sport, so I can hit them targets. But let's just be honest, it's also to protect my family. If I'm in a situation where I'm away from home, because AR should not be shot, close to a home because that round can go through multiple walls.
Right.
Right. So you got to know about your weapon and ballistics. Yeah, my shotgun is what most likely would be used to protect my home. I don't expect for a squad of people to be coming toward my house. But in case that were to happen, I do have my AR. But I don't think I'm not irrational and thinking that's going to happen more than likely. And we stay in a very good neighborhood. Nobody's had a break
Yeah,
in as far as I know. So I'm not really preparing for that, but I'm prepared for that. If that makes any sense.
it does.
So it's one of those things. And when I look at numbers like this, the AR may be, I may need that to go to HEB one day. You never know. You know what I'm saying? Like that's more likely what I may need the AR for. Somebody out in the parking lot full of gear, and I get out of that parking lot, and you know how packed HEB can be. I may not have time to get my family out, so I may have to deal with the threat myself until the police can get there, and hope that they don't interpret me as the threat.
Yeah, that's true. Now,
But
me myself personally, um, I was always taught to be aware of your surroundings, and now I'm more aware when I walk into places. Like I said, a telltale sign: you see somebody's 100 degrees outside, got on a trench coat.
come on now.
Yeah,
I mean, it's listen, it's funny that you say that because we all had that class. If
yeah,
you come from an urban environment, if you come from a situation where there's violence, you always look for the thing that don't make sense
yeah,
or the thing that don't fit. What's that song they used to play in Sesame Street? One of these things is not like the other. One of these things is
yeah.
not the same. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
We got that playing in our head at all times. So if something pops up, I go, hey, me and my wife, we all the time, we'll be out, we'll see something, go like, you know what, that don't look right. We out.
Yeah. It's
You
that
know,
gut, it's
this
the
ain't
gut
right.
instinct you have. You got that sixth sense inside you, and I always
You
tell
bet,
everybody, listen to your sixth sense because it's
you
trying to tell
better
you
know it.
something.
You better know it. And that's kind of one of those things, situational awareness and military situational awareness. Those two things went hand in hand. I guess that's what I was getting to earlier. There's some things some people don't need to be taught that we all going to have to kind of get on the same page because if you got all these millions of folks out here that feel violence is justified and obviously at this point should be obvious, a completely delusional situation, then we're going to have to, and just from the mental health standpoint, I can tell you there is a overflow of mentally ill people in the community. There just is. If you doubt that, in major cities like San Antonio, call some of these places every weekend, see if their beds are full. Just call, and you'll see. Yeah, if the beds are full, where are the people at?
Yeah.
They're in the community. If they're not being incarcerated, right, then they're in a community about to be incarcerated, right? And with the access they have to weapons, I'll tell you. Now, I was impressed though when I bought my AR. I was impressed that they did have a comprehensive background check. They check mental illness, felonies, all that type of stuff. So, but what I would love to see is when a person is diagnosed with suicidal ideation, whatever, that information would be put into a database along with that database with law enforcement, so that person could never again get a automatic weapon. Right? Homicidal ideation is something a little different, and in some cases, a suicidal ideation. And I think we're going to have to get there. And people that have those and homicide or terrorist, conversation is still homicidal ideation. People that want to kill all the Democrats or kill all the this, that, or the other. That's homicidal ideation. Once you start believing saying statements like that, no, you don't get access to a semi-automatic weapon. Are you crazy? That's rational, right?
Yeah.
But our laws are far from that. Right now, all you can do is observe that person if they say something like that. Unless they specifically say what they're going to do. And then I think that law enforcement can get involved, right? I think, right? I'm not an attorney, but I think that's how that works. So I can actually diagnose somebody today, say, hey, they've got homicidal ideation, have them locked up. They could be out in 30 days or so. And once they're cleared, they can go right into a place, get a, military grade weapon, 200 rounds, and wait to get triggered.
That's a good point you brought up. There was something, I forget which judge that was here in San Antonio. They could feel that they arrest somebody, they take their gun away, they go to jail, find out they can't hold him for anything. So when he's released, he get his gun back and go on his merry way
Come on.
without seeing the doctor yet.
So I drive past this sign from one of the popular gun shops here in San Antonio. It's got a picture of a handgun and it says, "It's your right." Now, I know what they're trying to say, that if you're a healthy minded American citizen currently, and you don't have any felonies or any uh, uh, reasons to not have a firearm, then it's your right to have a firearm. But it just says it's your right. And then it has a gun. So if you're not mentally, if you are mentally ill or you are off, could you possibly misread that?
Most definitely.
Right. So that's the problem. We advertise these things like it's your right. And I'm not even quite sure it's your right to have some of these grade weapons. You know, I've already said that. Back when the Second Amendment was written, the technology back then was a musket. Let's just be real. I mean, it's not a musket anymore. We're light years away from that. So does that we do should we have modified that? I think so. The rest of the world doesn't have the arms problems that we have in terms of the amount of arms. Now they have their own problems. They have violence and all that. But as armed as we are, you would think that we would be safer.
Yeah.
But it's worse because we're not, our other institutions have not caught up in terms of how we deal with people that are mentally ill and have been fanned. Fears and phobias have been fanned to get more arms out there into the community. And then when the person is triggered, they have an arsenal at their disposal. Thus, you have, uh, Uvalde, and thus you have New York, Buffalo, New York. You know, those people should never have been even close to access to a firearm if society was working correctly, and if that right was rightly administered.
Yeah. When you
You know,
when you brought up Buffalo and them sightings, I think a lot of people don't remember what happens to the Lubies in Austin, Texas at time. I'd never hear that brought up. What happened that time at Lubies?
tell the audience about Louis in
Uh,
Austin.
I guess a gunman went in there and just started shooting up everybody in Lubies in Austin, Texas, and I don't think they even called it a mass shooting. I can't remember what they called it, but I'm gonna look it up and find out. But that went on, and I hear about all these shootings that's going on. They go all the way back to Columbine and all that. Austin is not even mentioned.
Ron, there's been so many shootings. If I tell you the number of shootings, I think I gave the site where you can go to the gun violence website.
Yeah,
How many shootings have gone on in the past 3 years? It's easy to start forgetting about some of these things because there's so many of them, or not even be able to keep them straight in your head. There have been a lot, right? And it's in our psyche now.
yeah,
I hate to say it, but it's becoming more commonplace. I don't even think that those two things go together. Active shootings are becoming commonplace. But if you're going to be real about it, it's starting to become that way. And what can we do about it? Things like this. Continue to talk about the irrational thought process that allows somebody to think that it's necessarily a right to have a military grade weapon in the public because of some ideal that was written hundreds of years ago. I mean, we're supposed to evolve with our thinking. We're supposed to evolve with our technology. And if if we're having a problem in society, we have to evolve with that too and deal with it. But it goes back to what we've said in this show many times. The problems in this country and the problems of the world all revolve from three different things: greed, phobia, and then fears. And I should say fed phobias, right?
Yeah.
Now, some of these fears, are fed as well, but the phobias are completely fed. If you're staying in a hood and there's a lot of shootings going around, it might be a good idea for you to have a way to protect your home, protect your person.
Yeah.
But this old big fear of people coming over the wall and all this other stuff, we got to ship people to other areas in the country and all that type of stuff. Come on, man. Man, is that a fear or phobia? That's what that is. That's a
Yeah.
phobia. That's a phobia. And I think it's one that's going to bite him in the butt. I think a lot of these people, I was thinking about it. We have a lot of things we're trying to solve in this country. We have a lot of things that we are trying to evolve in this country. And if you look at the history, I'm just saying, check the history. A lot of the advancements, a lot of the changes, a lot of the things that we hold dear in this country were invented by immigrants. A
Yep.
lot of the comforts that we have in this country, a lot of the things that we depend on were invented by immigrants. So I wonder, that kid that you pushed back across the border, was that the one that was going to be or possibly give birth to the child who was going to solve or cure cancer? Was that the one? And it dawned on me, because I know how God operates. A lot of times, the person that's your opposition, that's where your blessing was through. And if you were obedient to him, obedient to God, the issue that you were having or going to have down the line would have been solved by the person that you are most diabolically opposed to.
Yes.
So I wonder if some of these kids that are being shipped back or not allowed to come into the country, what brilliance and what genius we're excluding down the line. Now, yes, I know there's going to be bad and good, but you know what? Some of the worst people in this country come from this country.
Amen to that.
Some of the monsters they got that demonic person that was out there, Dahmer. He's on Netflix right now, the number one show in the country.
Jeffrey
And
Dahmer.
yeah,
Yeah.
where was he born and raised?
Right here in good old USA.
We don't talk about that, though, dude. We don't talk about that dude. Now, this dude was not only killing, but killing, eating, and everything else. People,
And you got to put Charles Manson in there too.
come on now. We could talk about a few of them, right?
No.
So, before we start saying other people are crazy across the border, look at some of the insanity and the Silence of the Lambs type cats we got right here. You were talking about mental illness. Trust me, come talk to me. We can talk about some. I can't go into the names, but I can tell you, we got some threats right here.
And
A lot of them.
back in the days, they were undercover and doing things. Now they'll walk around with a suit and tie on, and with mainstream America blending right on in. And you
Well,
don't.
DeSantis just had to. One of his buddies, I just, I'm a news junkie. I have to watch all this stuff, because if I'm gonna tell you about something, I got to know about something, right?
Yeah.
So one of the guys that he just appointed, they just found that he got pictures of wearing a Klan robe when he was younger,
Mm.
and he had to step down. Right? He said, "Oh, I'm preparing for this hurricane, but yeah, I don't know about this picture that you told me about." But yeah, the guy just stepped down. Man, come on now, are y'all crazy? Of course, he saw that. He know about that picture, because the man stepped down because he was asked to step down. And who asked him to step down? The one that asked him, appointed him. And he was like, that's not going to work. Now that it's out there that you were wearing a Klan robe, and that's your thought process, the optics on that is too obvious.
Yeah.
So yeah, they can kind of get away with in plain sight. They just can't have pictures actually showing their affiliation with who they belong to. But you know what? Here's the deal, man. It's ironic that these hurricanes are whooping on Florida, right?
Yeah.
Whooping on a lot of these areas. And like I said, if you watch that show that I talked about last week, what was it called? The Cotton Picking Truth.
Yes.
Yeah, if you had a chance to see it, well, I tell you, Dick Gregory let you know where hurricanes come from and the route that they go and what route that they're usually on. And I'll be doggone if it didn't show some serious correlations, but maybe, maybe it's true. The slave trade is still fighting back.
Yes. I'm halfway through the movie right now, and I wait for those days when it's rainy and outside, sit
Yeah.
down and watch
Oh
a
no.
movie.
Right.
But I've been so busy. I'll put it on. I'll watch a little bit of it. Then something comes up. I get up, watch a little bit of it. But I'm gonna
Yeah.
sit down and watch the entire thing from start to finish without any breaks.
What do you think about it so far?
Um, the beginning was so devastating for me watching when they were showing that they slept out with the animals and had to have hay to cover themselves up for blankets. Now that was something that, and then if I'm right, um, some were held enslaved till the 60s.
Yeah, the lady that is talking, she was enslaved until the 60s, and I think even later than that. You're gonna see some other people that were enslaved up to this was I guess till like 2009.
Yeah,
And the point is that it still could be going on even today in some areas because the legislation that they're requesting or the investigation that they have requested has never been sanctioned.
see,
So, that's the thing. So, and also the link, wait till you see the link to the criminal justice system. Yeah, when that, I think they're starting to relate to it, kind of hint to it, but later on in the movie, it kind of shows clearly what the 13th Amendment said is not what people think it said.
yeah,
And it did what a lot of people thought it did. That's why there had to be other amendments. The 13th Amendment had to be ratified a few times, and that was for a reason. So, a lot of times it's important that you learn, that you read, and people think things through and really understand what's going on. And so when you get done with that, it's devastating, right? And it's probably better that you watch it in parts so you can process each
yeah,
thing that you're being told. Because, like I've said before many times, we haven't come as far as we thought we had. If you do the research, if you look at the numbers, if you look at the criminal justice system, we have not come as far as we thought we have. And that's why it's interesting when you have a slogan, "Make America Great Again." What period of time were you talking about? Because some of us are still waiting to receive the greatness.
yeah,
We know that we live in a great country. We just aren't seeing the benefit of it all the way, right?
yeah,
For some of us, right? We have all the resources around us, but for some folks that have been disenfranchised from those resources, it doesn't matter how good the hospital is if you don't have benefits to get to it. It doesn't make a difference that you have all these great Whole Food stores, but you can't afford anything in them.
yeah,
So, that's why we talk about equity. That's why we talk about opportunity. That's why we talk about, rights and not that it has to be given, but we need to be given the opportunity to actually earn and equip ourselves so that we can take advantage of the greatness around us. But I fear that period of time that Trump is hustling people for, because, a hustler always sells
well,
an illusion,
yeah,
right? Sells a
yeah,
bit, sells an illusion. The time of greatness that I think he's talking about was a time when more people were oppressed, and there was an elite group of folks that had more access. Because I sure would like to know, what is that period of time? If I could ask Trump one question, and if I could stomach him long enough to hear it, I would say, what was that year or period of time that you're talking about where America was great? That you're talking about? I know that we're a great nation in terms of wealth, power, and authority in the world, but what is
Yeah.
that period of time that you're talking about, and to who are you speaking about? Well,
Oh,
I,
trust me, it's written down somewhere what he meant by that.
no, it's. I bet it's not written. You know what? It might be written down, but I bet he didn't write it. Number one, and number two, because he's not going to write the hustle out. He that way it'd be too obvious. But it's written all over him, man. Like, so many things coming out. Like when he got to the White House, all the black staff he thought were waiters. Been quite a while since all the black folks are waiters at the White House. Not to say that they don't have some, but they also have staff members
Yeah.
there. So we got to get into it, man. Look at, and like I said a few shows ago, we got to get into and change the culture of the foundation of this country, and we got to get in there and change it at the root. And that's where we're going to start making changes, right? And I think people are starting to feel it happen. Right, I see the intellectuals and of black and brown hue changing the landscape, demanding that our voices be heard and that we have something to say. And what we have to say may even save the fabric of this country. Barack Obama was a perfect example of that. I don't understand why so many people hate Barack Obama that possibly didn't vote for him when half of them are now have some type of health insurance that they normally wouldn't have had. So here we go again, showing the world civilization when all they want to show us is barbarism.
Well, you brought up that part, the point that we're speaking out just what we want. And like I said, history repeat itself. We did the exact same thing in the 60s. Speaking out what we wanted. It seemed like we could take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back.
Yeah, it's going to come out in that movie that you're watching. Again, if the narrative is there,
Yeah.
we have to. The whole civil rights, the whole point of the civil rights movement was really interesting. There really wouldn't have been a civil rights movement if people weren't willing to show how barbaric they're willing to be. It was a well-known tactic. I was listening to this on NPR, but it was a well-known tactic of the civil rights movement that they were dependent on people to show how ugly they are. Emmett Till, rest in peace, and the horrific story with that. If it wasn't for Emmett Till, the civil rights movement wouldn't have been broadcasted to the world like that. If it wasn't for all the desegregation, sit-ins and things of that nature, and a lot of those events would have been were canceled when there wasn't going to be a decent amount of people coming to the event, because the world had to be shown really how evil this society really was.
Yeah.
And that's what gave it the foundation. So, we know there's some ugly things in this country that have to be dealt with and will be dealt with in time.
It's a lot of ugly stuff going on in this country. And
Yeah,
right.
but it will be, well, hopefully will be dealt with in time, right? And that's what this is about. But the first thing you got to do is know about it, know about how the tactics move and the mindsets that allow those things to happen, and how we even play into our own demise by playing particular roles, spending a lot of money on the misrepresentation of our culture, without the explanation of, why it is the way it is. All right. If you're born in a situation where you have to fight and you have to become violent to survive that environment. That's not the goal. That's the situation you had to live through and survive through. And once you get out of that, hopefully you can help to change that environment and give other outs.
Yeah.
Um, I was encouraged. I was watching something from Snoop, and he was talking about recently acquiring Death Row Records, and there was an interview a while back. I'm not sure when it was, but he talked about how Snoop's children and Diddy's children are best friends. They have sleepovers and all that, and those of us that came up during the big East Coast West Coast beef where people died and
Yeah.
all that. There's a big misconception, a huge misconception of what was going on. Snoop never wanted anybody to die on the East Coast. He was a big fan of the East Coast, but we keep up these perceptions, as he laid out, and there are so many people that misinterpret that beef and what that was going on. It was a competitive beef. It wasn't supposed to be people dying over music.
Right.
But we perpetuated this narrative, and then some folks started to live that narrative. But when in actuality, the two groups of folks that should be diabolically opposed to each other, they're actually very close friends. If your child is sleeping over at my house, we're close.
Yes.
So if Diddy's kids are sleeping over at Snoop's house, and he's talking about how Diddy's wife, rest in peace, not wife, but Diddy's ex-girlfriend, I forget her name, that passed away recently, used to bring their children over to Uncle Snoop's house, and they used to hang out and spend the night, and went to college together. And Snoop's saying he's trying to change that narrative. That narrative has been changed, but we still hold on to violent narratives. We still hold on to violent schemes to the point where now one of the most dangerous jobs you can have in your early 20s right now is to be a rapper and be a person of color, because they all are getting killed pretty much.
Yeah.
Just check the news, right? So where is this narrative coming from? Is the perceptions, it's what we're adhering to, it's what we believe we should be doing. When I think a couple of shows ago, I said we have access to over $788 billion. Why are we still enslaving ourselves and not stepping off the mental, and now even, as the show shows you, physical plantations?
Yep. We could be doing things with that money.
But see, the thing is, and that's why I love this show, because it doesn't matter if you have money if your mind is still being controlled. Because you're just going to get that money back. That's exactly what you're going to do. You don't have to worry about a person's money if you have their mind.
True that.
So I got to tear you down, Ron, because you're going to be successful, and you might make more money than me. So I got to attack you because I don't want you to take my spot on the plantation.
That is so true what you just said, and that is our people problem.
Well, what was that guy? I forget his name now. I say it all the time. That demonic guy that they say went around and tried to show how you could pit one person versus the other based on color, based on all these differences. I can't think of his name right now. I say it all the time, but now I got to recall it. I can't think of it. But he kind of had this manifesto on how we would attack each other. And I'll be doggone if that's not still how a lot of us operate.
Yeah.
A lot of us. I have people that I've worked with professionally that I go, man, why is that person like that? Oh, and I think about the slave narrative and I go, oh, he's still on the plantation. If I show my ability and it seems a little brighter than his, he's got to attack me because he's afraid I'm going to take his spot.
Hey, whoo. You said a mouthful right there. That is so true.
But come on now, what's that guy's name? Now I know we've said it. I can't think of it right now. But I have to get it for the next show. I say it all the time. I can't think of his name right now. Kind of one of those things where you know about him, but you want to block him out.
Yeah.
I'll think about it, man. Bring up another topic. I'll see if I can find it real quick.
Bring another topic. Well, we almost out of time.
Oh, look at that. Just that quick.
Boy, I tell you, we're almost there. We covered a variety of things today. Um, I'm still on this anxiety deal that people are going through, and there you gave the answer. You let yourself into the things of what's happening with yourself and your body. I would say it's your people you're hanging around with. I'm gonna go ahead and put that out there because if you hang around with somebody that want to build you up, they're gonna keep you below them so they be stronger than you and keep on just belittling you like you're nobody. You got to move out that crowd and get into another crowd where people are always there to help you, pick you up. We hang around so many people that's so negative and bring you down. You think that you know better than what they're telling you. You know?
Willie Lynch. Willie Lynch. Yeah. The Willie Lynch letter. I think that was it. Yeah, the infamous letter of Willie Lynch, the white supremacist who understood the use of principles to cripple the minds of African slaves and their descendants to keep them out of the mainstream. Willie Lynch. So it's that mindset. It's that demonic mindset that's still trying to hold on for generations and generations after. Instead of seeing you as my brother, I got to see you as my enemy because there's only so much opportunity that we're going to be allowed instead of creating our own opportunities.
Yeah.
And that's our nature. We create. But in this country, we've created and haven't stolen. That's typically how that works. We create it, and then somebody steals it, patents it, and then what was it? The guy, Famous Amos. Remember that?
Yeah.
They try to famous Amos us. We come up with the cookie, we come up with the concept. They steal it, brand it, make billions and millions, and we can't even make money off our own name.
It's sad.
And our own product, right? Well,
yeah,
that's what has gone on, man. Kentucky Fried Chicken. Do you really think Colonel Sanders came up with that recipe? Come on now.
And let's not.
There's a story even on that.
And there's a story behind Aunt Jemima too.
Yes, sir. There's a lot of them.
I read that article 2 weeks ago, and I was shocked on how she was mistreated. But she was an advocate, though.
The story goes on and on, man. I mean, I guess what the main point of all that is, people hate what they can't do.
Yeah.
And they don't want the secret. If I've done you wrong, then I see you starting to come up like, oh.
Yeah.
Because if it were them, what would they do to the person that oppressed them? They would want a reaction. But it's like, now we're just trying to, get our cake and possibly let our kids eat it too.
Amen to that.
And that's it. And you know what? We're not gonna back down from that. So, like I told them when I picked up my AR, all these folks can get all these guns they want to, but you know what? You can only shoot one at a time. And as long as I got one and you got one, those are odds that I'll deal with.
Pray don't come down to that.
Well, if it does, it does. You know what I'm saying? But the fact of the matter is, you 5% of the population and only one person can hold a gun, it's going to be a whole lot of caches to get taken. And not all law enforcement, and I know of quite a few that ain't going to play that game. And some of these are supervisors at the highest level.
Yeah.
And you never know who. You know what I'm saying?
Amen to that.
So I already know if it go down, I hope it don't. But hey, infantry, hey, what they say when I was in the Army, we ain't never scared. We ready. And we ain't going back. You ain't going back. By any means necessary.
There you
We
go.
ain't going back. So, hey, your actions speak so loudly, I can't hear a word you're saying.
There
Right.
you go.
So that's it. I think that's our time, right? We 1 minute over. I'm trying to keep us on time.
We're doing good. We're doing good. We're doing good, Joseph. Well, I appreciate you coming on board. It's 61 degrees outside. It's beautiful outside.
Thank you.
I'm looking at it right now. 61 and sunny skies. Oh man, let it come on. I love it. Now that'll brighten up your day right there by just going outside, smelling that fresh air.
That's right. About to do it right now.
Yeah. Well, Joseph, we appreciate you taking time out. You take care, and we'll talk to you next week or in between.
All right. Be blessed, everybody.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.